Hey everyone, Chris Dutton here, and welcome to Microsoft Power BI, up and running with Power BI Desktop. Now, if you're looking for a hands-on, project-based approach to learning business intelligence, you've come to the right place. In this course, you'll be playing the role of lead analyst for Adventure Work Cycles, a global manufacturing company. Your mission? Design and execute an end-to-end business intelligence solution from scratch. But the good news is, I'll be right there with you, guiding you through the ins and outs of Power BI and sharing crystal clear explanations and helpful pro tips each step of the way. Our journey will begin with an intro to Power BI Desktop and then transition through each phase of the business intelligence workflow. We'll begin by connecting and shaping our source data with Power BI's query editing tools, and then explore concepts like functionality, normalization, and filter context as we build out a full-scale data model. From there, we'll add calculated columns and measures using data analysis expressions or DAX. Finally, take things to the finish line by designing dynamic, interactive reports using Power BI visualization tools. So what do you say? Ready to dive in? Sign up today and lifetime access to over 10 hours of high-quality video content, downloadable project files and resources, course quizzes and homework assignments, and one-on-one expert support, all by a 30-day, 100% guarantee. Thanks again for choosing this course. Now let's get started. Hey everyone, Chris Dutton here, and welcome to Microsoft Power BI, up and running with Power BI Desktop. Now, if you're looking for a hands-on, project-based approach to learning business intelligence, you've come to the right place. In this course, you'll be playing the role of lead analyst for Adventure Work Cycles, a global manufacturing company. Your mission? Design and execute an end-to-end business intelligence solution from scratch. But the good news is, I'll be right there with you, guiding you through the ins and outs of Power BI and sharing crystal clear explanations and helpful pro tips each step of the way. Our journey will begin with an intro to Power BI Desktop and then transition through each phase of the business intelligence workflow. We'll begin by connecting and shaping our source data with Power BI's query editing tools, and then explore concepts like functionality, normalization, and filter context as we build out a full-scale data model. From there, we'll add calculated columns and measures using data analysis expressions or DAX. Finally, take things to the finish line by designing dynamic, interactive reports using Power BI visualization tools. So what do you say? Ready to dive in? Sign up today and lifetime access to over 10 hours of high-quality video content, downloadable project files and resources, course quizzes and homework assignments, and one-on-one expert support, all by a 30-day, 100% guarantee. Thanks again for choosing this course. Now let's get started. All right, let's kick things off and talk about our course project. So here's the situation. You've just been hired by Adventure Work Cycles. It's a global manufacturing company, and they want you to design and deliver an end-to-end business intelligence solution from scratch. Now, this won't be a simple project. The client needs a way to track core business KPIs like sales, revenues, profit, and returns, but also compare regional performance across sales territories, analyze performance and trending at the product level, and forecast future profits, and use the data to identify the company's high-value customers. And as if that's not challenging, all you've been given to work with is a folder of raw CSV files that contains information about transactions, returns, products, customers, and territories. But don't worry, we're going to work through this together. I'm here to coach you through each step of the way and break down the project into a few core objectives. So our mission here is to use Power BI Desktop to connect and transform the raw data from those CSV files, use those tables to build a relational data model to blend information together, create new calculated columns and DAX measures, and finally design an interactive report to actually analyze and visualize all of this data. So let me give you a little sneak preview of the project that we're actually going to be creating from a completely blank canvas. So what you're looking at here is the final deliverable that we're going to provide our AdventureWorks clients. We've got an executive summary here that allows you to break down the data and explore information by categories, by product subcategories. We can see the core business KPIs, the revenue, order volume, and returns for the current month. We'll provide a quick snapshot of most ordered products and the top revenue driving products, and include the ability to filter down the entire page by specific sales regions. Not only that, but we'll include drill through functionality to dive deeper into specific product performance and provide insights like pacing against targets, profit trending over time, and forecasts into the future, and even scenario tests to see the impact of pricing adjustments on actual bottom line company profits. Last but not least, we'll provide a view that's all about the AdventureWorks customer so that we can see the top revenue driving customers, breakdowns by demographics, like gender, income level, and occupation. We'll see orders by age, top customers and top line metrics, and bookmarks and links to tie it all together. So again, we're going to be working through the business intelligence workflow together step by step to build this entire project from nothing but a folder of raw CSV files. I hope you're excited. A lot ahead of us. All right, the time has come for us to officially meet Power BI. Now, a quick summary here. Power BI is a standalone Microsoft business intelligence product, which includes both desktop and web-based applications for loading, modeling, and visualizing data. Again, the focus for this course will be on desktop specifically. There's a ton of additional info if you'd like to learn more at powerbi.microsoft.com. Now, I want to show you something called the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Gartner's a market intelligence research company. They produce these quadrants a few times a year. And what we're looking at here is the Magic Quadrant for analytics and business intelligence platforms specifically, updated February 2018. And the idea is that you have completeness of vision on the x-axis and ability to execute on the y. And when you break down the players into the 4 quadrants, you end up with niche players, challengers, leaders, and visionaries. And where you want to be is right here in this top right corner where the leaders live. And that's exactly where we find Microsoft with Power BI leading the charge among some very popular, very powerful other platforms like Tableau, Domo, IBM, Click, etc. So really exciting time to be learning Power BI because I think it's only going to get more powerful and more popular from here. With that, let's transition into why Power BI. So what are some of the key benefits that make this such a game-changing product? Well, first and foremost, that data from virtualware, whether it's a database, files on your desktop, cloud services, folders of files, etc. There's a huge connector that allows you to access a ton of information. And then not only that, but you can create fully editable ETL procedures to shape and transform and load this. Next, we can actually build relational models in Power BI to blend the data from each of those multiple sources. And this is a concept that's getting more important in the analytics world. By creating relationships between all of those sources, we're able to analyze holistic performance across our entire data model. And that's critical for anyone working in data or analytics or business intelligence. It's the ability to blend information, tie sources together, and paint that comprehensive view of performance. Third, we can define complex calculations using data or that DAX formula language. So we'll be doing this to enhance our data sets and interesting advanced analytics techniques using those powerful and portable expressions. And then perhaps the most important one, we can visualize our data with interactive reports and dashboards. And what we'll be doing throughout the course is actually building our own custom tool using Power BI's best-in-class visualization and dashboard features. And then last but not least, fact is Power BI is the industry leader among BI platforms. It's intuitive, it's powerful, and most importantly, it's absolutely free to get it Power BI top. So again, really, really exciting time to be learning this. last but not least, comparison between Power Excel is quite elaborate, especially for in my Power course in Excel. So it's like a Venn diagram where you've got Power BI tools on the right, this area of overlap with features that both platforms share. So here's kind of what's like. You've got these Excel specific tools on the left, like Power Map, Power View, and Cube functions. And shifting over to the right side, you've got the report dashboard views in Power BI that don't exist in Excel. You've got those custom visualization tools that we've been talking about as the publishing and collaboration options available through Power BI service. But what folks is this area of intersection. Like I've said before, these two tools are actually the exact same engine. Power BI takes the same data shaping and then adds these incredible new reporting and visualization publishing tools on top of them. So even though they're called different things in different places, the data loading tools will be called either Power Query or Get and Transform in Excel. The data modeling tools will be in Excel versus the relationships view in Power BI. The fact is, it's the same. Of all is that transitioning is incredibly easy. These two platforms play really together. So if you've been investing a ton of time building models in the Excel environment, you can import them right into Power BI in a matter of minutes. And I'll show you exactly what in the next section. So there you have it. That's our intro to Power BI. Let's talk about the Power BI interface and workflow. So when you open up a Power BI desktop file, it'll look something like this. We're going to dive into each of the specific menus and panes and options here as we move through the course. But what's important to pay attention to now is this set of three icons on the left side of the screen. These are your three core views that represent the entire Power BI universe. You've got your report view, your data view, and your relationships view. Now, when we think about the Power BI and broad business intelligence workflow, it actually doesn't really follow this order. We don't start with the report and then move into data and relationships. We're going to follow kind of a different process. Instead, we're going to start with the data view and the query editor. This is where we're going to connect, shape, and transform that raw data. Once we have our data, we're going to shift gears into the relationships view. That's where we're going to actually design a data model and tie those tables together with relationships. And from there, move into the third phase, which is actually designing interactive reports and visualizations. All that's going to take place in the Reports tab. So we will be bouncing around quite a bit between all of these different views, but generally speaking, this is how things are going to flow. So let me pull up Power BI. I just want to give you a very quick preview of how these different views and tabs look and feel. So here we are in Power BI Desktop. As you can see on the left, we've got our three familiar icons: report, data, and relationships. Right now I'm in my report view, which is basically my canvas for creating dashboards. I can drag visualizations and objects. I can access my fields and measures here, but this is where all of the designing takes place. Clicking through to the data tab, this is where you can actually see the tables and the raw data and fields that you're working with. So you can click through to see different previews of your tables. You can also add your calculated columns and measures using data analysis expressions here as well. You've got your relationships view, which is all about the data model. This is where you can see your tables as objects, along with the relationships, the cardinality, the filter flow, everything about your model. I'm going to cover all that in the Data Modeling 101 section of the course. So there you have it. That's your 10,000 view of the Power BI desktop interface. And next up, we've got text-specific tools. And looking at the Transform tab in the Query Editor, you'll notice that Power BI groups different sets of tools together based on their purpose and function. So in this case, we'll find all of our text-specific tools grouped together at the end of the. And within this group, we have some really interesting, powerful options. For one, we can split up a column based on a specific character or delimiter, or based on a number of characters. We can format any of our text columns using basic formatting options like lowercase, uppercase, proper case, which is capitalizing the first letter of each word, or we can use tools like trim, which eliminates leading and trailing spaces, or clean, which does the same thing and also eliminates non-printable characters. Now you might be thinking that those trim and clean options, they aren't that helpful until you run into the case where you have one trailing space in your data set. And trust me, this will drive you crazy the first time you experience it until you figure it out. And the problem is, as human beings, we are incapable of seeing a trailing space. It's completely invisible to us, and it looks exactly the same as another data point without that trailing space. But to Excel, or in this case to Power BI, it looks like a completely different and unique value. So in cases like that, trim or clean can be great tools just to standardize and help avoid issues like that, especially if you're working with really messy or unstructured text data. We also have great extract tools. We can extract a certain subset of characters from a string based on a specified length. We can extract the first or last number of characters or a range. But where it gets really interesting is using delimiters. So we can tell Power BI that we return all of the characters before a specific delimiter or symbol or character, or after it, or between two distinct delimiters. And there are also some advanced options as well that allow you to specify whether you search from the left side of the string or the right, and if you want to skip a number of instances of the delimiter before returning text. So some really great flexibility there with those extract tools. So you may have noticed that some of the tools here are grayed out and inactive, like merge columns or parse. And that brings up a really important point, which is that this toolbar is completely dynamic based on what you've selected. So if you've only selected a single column, the merge columns option is irrelevant, so you can't even click it. You'd have to select multiple columns in order to activate that option. And then taking that even further, if you've selected a column that's numerical instead of text, this entire group of tools might be replaced by number-specific tools instead. So just remember that the entire ribbon, the entire toolbar that you're seeing here will dynamically change based on your selections. Now, one more very important point before we switch gears into Power BI. Anytime you see this yellow box that says, hey, this is important, you guessed it, I'm about to talk about something important. So that means focus in, pay attention, stop playing with the dog or checking Facebook, because this is something that is going to come up time and time again in the course, and it's really, really important for you to fully grasp and understand. So what I want to talk about is the difference between transform and add column, because this is something that confused me for longer than I care to admit. And what I was noticing was that the same tools, in fact, the same identical sets of tools, kept popping up in different places. And for the longest time, I just thought this was really confusing and redundant until I realized that the outcome is completely different depending on where you select that tool. So when you select a tool from within the Transform tab, you're essentially modifying or overwriting the column that you've selected. When you choose a tool from the Add Column tab, you're creating a brand new column to your table. That may sound really obvious when I say it now, but I guarantee as you're learning this tool and as you're playing around with the query editor, you will at some point in time select the tool from the wrong tab. And that's okay, because obviously nothing's set in stone. It's as simple as just deleting that last applied step and you're back where you started. But it is something to keep in mind, and hopefully that help you at least understand where you're going wrong and why these tools appear in multiple places. So let's open up Power BI and get our hands dirty with some of these text tools. All right, so here I am in my AdventureWorks report. Go ahead and open it up as well. I'm gonna head back into the Get Data option, click Text CSV again. This time, instead of products, let's go into AdventureWorks Customers and double click. Here we're at our preview. All of these default settings look good. So I can go ahead and click Edit to launch the query editor. All right, so first things first, here's our AW product lookup query that we created in the last lecture. And now we see a second for AdventureWorks customer. So let's go through those two steps that we do every time we get in here to the query editor. We're going to start with the table name. And for the sake of consistency, let's go with AW underscore, customer lookup. The last file that we loaded was called product lookup, and it was called product lookup for a reason, because it had all sorts of information about individual products, where each row represented a unique product key and each column represented some attribute about that product. Now, similarly, here we're looking at customer instead. So I can press enter, lock in my table name, and as I look in the preview here, as you can see, I've got a customer key and then all sorts of attributes about my customers. So let's go ahead and finish our quick QA. We've got column headers that look correct. Let's look at the values very quickly. Our key is a whole number, which is good. We've got names, which are strings or text fields, which are good. We've got a birth date column, which is a date represented by this little calendar icon on top left. And then as we scroll through, marital status, gender, email, all text. This one's interesting. It actually recognized the annual income field as a currency or fixed decimal. That's fine. We can leave it as is. And then we've got total children, education level, occupation, and a homeowner snow flag, all text. So check those boxes. Everything looks good. And now we can proceed to our table transformations. So first things first, let's scroll over. I've got my eye on these name columns because they're all uppercase and that looks silly to me. So I'd like to make the proper case instead. So let's go ahead and select the prefix column, go into add column. We'll find our text tools here. And what we want to do is go into the format tools and click capitalize each word, which is proper case. And when we do that, it created a new column here at the end of our table, which is essentially a duplicate version of our prefix column, but with the correct capitalization. And you can see that the header name has been defaulted to capitalize each word, which is just totally ridiculous. And as you probably have guessed by now, the reason this happened was because we added that format tool through the add column tab, when what we really wanted to do was simply overwrite the existing column and transform it. So we should have accessed the formatting tools through the transform tab instead. And so that's what I'm talking about. It's very easy to make these kind of mistakes. So you really just have to be vigilant about knowing which tab you're in each time you create a calculated column. But no worries. The good news is that it's a very easy fix. You can't Control Z to undo here. The equivalent is just going into your applied steps and pressing the X to move that last step that we just created. So now I'll scroll back, select the prefix column again, make sure that I'm in my transform tab, and go through that same process. Format, capitalize each word, and there you go. It's overwritten the values into the format that I'd prefer. Now to do the same thing to the first and last name columns, I could do them individually, or I can select one, hold the Shift key, click the other. That will grab both of them at the same time. And let's do the 2-for-1 special. Capitalize each word. So now I have a nice clean prefix, first name, and last name. So that's helpful, but I'd really like to have the customer's full name accessible in a single field as well. So what that means is that I'd like to merge all three of these columns together and separate them with a space to create a new column that I'll name full name. So what I've done is select prefix, I've held Shift, selected last name to grab all three, and instead of clicking merge, warning sign, we're still in the transform tab, I need to make sure to go into add column instead and access the merge tool from here. So when I click merge columns, it gives me a little dialog box with some options. In this case, I do want a separator in between the values. I want that to be base. And let's name our new column full name. So I'll press OK. And you can see it's added a new step. When I scroll to the right, there we go. We got our new full name column. Looks good. We've got spaces between the names. And now one thing to note, just kind of a side note, it added this step, but it kind of gave it a default name that says inserted merged column. Now, as I click through, it's pretty easy to see exactly what column was merged and what was added. But if we want to make this even more clear, I can always right click and rename that step. And instead of just saying inserted merged column, I can actually type full name. That just makes it a little bit more explicit what's going on. I created a new column and it's called full name. All right, so next up, I want to make a couple more changes. I want to really focus on this email address column here. And the first thing that I want to do is extract the username from this email. But the problem is I can't just say, give me the first 5 characters, because that would work for John 24, but not Eugene 10. So it's got to be a dynamic number of characters from the left side of this email address based on the location of that @ symbol. So this is where we're going to use that extract based delimiter option. So let's go ahead and select email address. I want to add a new column for username. I'm going to use the extract tools here. So again, not just default length, not an explicit number of characters, but I want the text before a delimiter. So here you go. All I need to do is say the delimiter that you're looking for is that @ sign. If we drill into the advanced options, this is where you can say, search from the left or search from the right. You can skip a certain number of instances of the delimiter. In this case, we don't need any of that. All we want is the text before the @ sign. So press OK. Added a new column. As you can see, it didn't let me name the column at the same time, but it did give me the values that I want. So what I can do here is just double click the header and I can give it a name. Let's call it username. Now let's do one more similar example, but with one more complication. So going back to our email address, what if this time, instead of the username, we want to return the domain name? And the domain is anything that falls between the @ symbol and the .com at the end of the string. To do that, I can use the same extract tools, but this time I want the text between 2 delimiters. So I can go into this option here and I can say my start delimiter is the @ sign and my end delimiter is either the period, or I can type .com. Both will do the same thing. And when I press OK, same exact idea. It's getting a new column with the string or the characters between those 2 delimiters. I can change the column type to something like domain and press enter. And there you have it. So very, very easy way to do some pretty complex stuff. So one last adjustment to make to this domain column here. I want to get rid of the dash and replace it with a space. So to do that, I'm going to transform the existing column, not add a new one. And you'll see this other group of tools that say any column. That means they're not text or number or date specific. They can be applied in a number of different circumstances. In this case, I'll find the replace tool right here, set. So it's as simple as it sounds. I can find the dash and I can replace it with a space, press OK. Now I've got adventure space works. And why don't we go ahead and format that capitalized in proper case, and we are all set. So there you go. We used the formatting options. We added columns, transformed columns. We used the extract tools based on delimiters. We merged columns. Some really good examples of how these different text functions can be used to enhance, clean, and transform a data table. So I think we're all good with customer lookup. The only thing left is to go back to our home tab and click close and apply to load that data into our file. And as soon as that loads up, we'll see that it's going to appear as another object right here in our relationships tab, right next to our friend product lookup. We'll also see it available in our field list, accessible in both the data view and the report view. So there you have it. Straightforward, pretty intuitive to use, but there are some pretty interesting, maybe not so intuitive tools. It sounds straightforward on the surface, but it's tricky to get a hang of. At least it was for me, a learner. And what I'm about to show you is what really did it for me. So imagine this simple 2-column table. You've got years in the first column and you've got a circle like unit sales in the second column. if we were to select and hit this table, we would essentially take the year in each row and turn it. So now instead of row for 1994, we have a column for go 5, 96, 97, 98. So we've basically flipped that table from a vertical format up to horizontal. We've turned rows. If we started out with the table in that horizontal format and we selected a row, we could unpivot to transform it into that from those years, which had been columns, and transformed to rows. So my little tip here is that I imagine that the table is kind of like on a hinge in that upper left corner. Pivoting is like rotating it up from vertical to horizontal. Unpivoting is like rotating it down, from horizontal. Now, one thing to note, there's another tool in the query editor called transpose, and that works in a really similar way, but the difference is that it doesn't recognize unique values. So a table like the one we're looking at here, where we don't have duplicate year units, and transposing would yield the exact same result. But if instead we had 2 rows of 1994, for instance, pivoting would collapse both of those rows to a 94 column, while transposing would preserve both versions and keep each with a 1994 header. So one way to think about it is that this is kind of clunkier, it's kind of brute force. It just takes the entire table and it just flips it. So I actually have a little demo file I'm going to show you, because you do have to really see it in real time to understand what's going on. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, so this file isn't available as part of the course resource, so just sit back and for this one, I can grab my data as a CSV, and I've called this file unpivot demo. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up here. And right off the bat, you can tell this table is a little funky. There's things wrong. Number one, I don't have column headers, which is not that surprising. The column headers here are actually years. So when Power BI took a look at the sample of this table, it said, okay, got values in each column. I have no way of knowing if that's a year or similar to the one in row 2 or 3. It's an easy fix. You can just go ahead and click use rows, and there you go. Now our year is moved to headers. So we've made one improvement still far from ideal. And what we have here is information about unit 6 and revenue metrics broken down by year, 94, 95, each as columns. And as an analyst, as someone who needs to take this data and interpret it and analyze it in table format, can create a lot of headaches. Really what we're looking for here, deal with each dimension or metric as a column and each observation as a row. So ideally, what I want to transform this table into is a format that has the columns year, sales, and revenue. That would give me a format that I could take and plug and analyze in any way that I choose. So let's see if we can do that with our pivoting and unpivoting tool. First things first, I don't like the fact that I have years in columns, so I want to turn these columns to rows. And to do that, I'm rotating down from horizontal to vertical, pivoting. So what I can do is go ahead and select all of my year columns, go into transform, and then press this unpivot columns button. And there you go, it's transformed my year columns into year rows, labeled attribute, which is okay, we'll fix that later. And that hasn't totally solved my problem. I still have total revenue as my rows instead of columns, but it's got one step. And one thing to note before I move to the next step is that there's another way I could have done that. I just remove that step and selecting all 5 of these columns. I could have selected this first column and chosen the unpivot other column option. So arrive at the exact same place, just another way to get there. So I've gotten a little bit closer. I've got using the adjustment I need to make now is turn these total revenue labels from rows into columns. So I need to do the first I did and take this vertical orientation and pivot it into a, so you guessed it, I'm going to select that first column, pivot column, and this says, okay, where do your values, do they live in the attribute column or the value column? It's the value column. Press OK, and there you have it. Now we got first column, which is attribute for year. You can go ahead and name that column year. We've got units column and a total revenue column, and this is a table format that I can work with as an analyst. So that was a great demo of how both pivot and unpivot can be used to kind of wrestle a messy table format into something more workable. So if I take this all the way back to the start, just to each step back to square one, because I'm not dealing with any duplicate here, I could use transpose in this case as well. And in fact, that's actually efficient. I could select this entire table as is and essentially flip it inside using that transpose option. So in the transform menu, I can just press transpose here. That pretty much did the trick. It put years on a column, unit revenue on the third column. The only thing we have to do now is use those first rows and promote the headers. And there you go. We've gotten to our same ending point using both combination of pivot and unpivot and transpose. So again, kind of tricky to work with at first, but these tools can be really, really helpful when you need them. So with that, I'm going to delete that query that I just created. There we go. Close out of the editor. And there you have it, pivoting and unpivoting. All right, so I just showed you how to stack some tables together using the query editing append tools. We took these three individual AdventureWorks sales files from 2015, 16, and 17, and we appended them as a new table called AW Sales 2015 through 2017, which included all of the data across all three files. And that worked pretty well, but remember the downside. This new table that we created is now dependent on the three individual component tables. So we can't delete any of these individual tables. We have to keep this whole set of four. So let's actually scrap these four sales files and pull them into Power BI using the folder approach instead. So I can delete the appended file first, and press OK. And once that one's gone, now I can delete any of these individual ones because no relationship between them exists and there are no dependencies that we need to worry about. So 2017, there we go. So all of our sales data is gone. We're left with just the product here on desktop, obtaining these individuals and create a new folder there. Folder. Okay, here's where I've got all of my adventure files, including the three individual sales. What I'm going to do is actually right click and create a new folder right here. Adventure. I'm going to name it something like AW underscore sales. You can hit whatever. Once I've created that, I'm going to select each of my sales tables, 2015, 16, and 17. I'm going to drag all that to sales. Now when you click in, you can see that it contains all three of those files. And once I've done that, I can go ahead and close that file window, back to query editor, grab a connection to a new source, and this time I need to go down into the more options, and right here you'll see the option to connect to a folder. So let's go ahead and connect, and the first thing is going to add folder path. So let's go ahead and browse and navigate the course files, Power BI course files, AdventureWorks, AW Sales. So that's the folder that I just created that contains those 3 individual sales files. I'm going to press OK and OK once more. Now the preview looks a little bit different. It has binary functions. So rather than actually previewing the data, the actual rows, viewing the file in this path, we have 2 options here. We can either combine and edit on the spot, actually walk through each of the steps. Actually, I want to show you exactly what this looks like bit by bit. So there we go. When I press edit, it lands me here in the query editor. And I see the view that I got in the preview. Not looking at actual data points, attributes about the files that exist in the folder that I've linked to. So the key here is to look at this first column. This is kind of similar to columns when we merged tables, where we had to take one extra step to actually sort out the column itself. Same idea here. We have to take one extra step to break out the actual content when these CSV files located there. And to do that, we'll just press combine right here in the content column. And when we do that, it through the analysts and opens up a new preview window with a combined files. This shows us an actual data preview from each of our files. We can select the first, second, third here. And if our preview looks good, if we know we've got the same column structure we know we do, then we can go ahead and press OK. And after it runs through some process, the data lands right here in the preview window and contains data for all 3. So same thing, we can filter on that order date. Starting in January 20, and our dates extend all the way through through the end of June 2017. So we've got all of our data in here, got all of our columns up to the order quantity column. We do have one additional column here, which is the name, and that's which file within the folder that data came from. We have a help attribute if you do want to keep it. In this case, we don't need it. So let's go ahead and remove that same column. And there you have it. We have our appended containing all of the data in one place. And as you can see, it automatically gave us a table in the way we named our folder, which in this case was AW_sales. We can leave it just like that or add the years to that, 2015 through 2017. In this case, this is the final version of the sales table that I'm going to use. It's AW sales. It's nice, it's clean, it's concise. That'll work just fine. So last thing on the left side of the screen, you'll see that AW sales table showed up beneath our. You'll also see some automatically generated query information above. It's automatically written, automatically generated in order to make all match files within the folder. So we don't even have to touch this. We don't even have to. I usually will just kind of collapse it in the series folder. This all of our kind of primary tables will continue. Same end result as loading up 3 individual tables and using the append tools. We have one nice clean table without those extra tables and dependencies. And if we ever need to pull in additional years of sales data, simply folders right into that AW sales folder and press refresh editor, and all of that data would automatically be pulled in. So that just last step is to close and apply and load that to our file. And let's take a look at relationships. There's AW sales. Here's a tip: connecting Power BI folder files.